Alrighty, welcome everyone to the Jax Now hosting of the Meet the Candidate Forum with two wonderful candidates for President and Vice President of National Organization for Women. They are Kat Duesterhaus. Yay! And Triana Arnold-James. So, without further ado, I'm just going to let them take it away and talk a little bit about their platform and why it's so critically important that you all vote. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here today. I'm Kat Duesterhaus. I use they, them, or she, her pronouns. And I'm really proud to be the National Organization for Women's first non-binary candidate for president. My start in activism was really skyrocketed and launched from my involvement with the Florida chapter of the National Organization for Women. And so now has really kind of been a home for me for the last 4 years, and provided me with opportunities to make a difference and a strong community of fellow feminists, which has meant so much. You know, as everybody here knows, we are in one of the testing labs where Project 2025 policies have been experimented on our people, on the people of the state of Florida. And so we've done some really great work over the last 4 years. It hasn't been all doom and gloom. We've passed some really important protections for women and children and all survivors of all genders of sexual assault. We've allowed judges to have the ability to temporarily pause visitation and protect kids in situations where one of the co-parents is abusive. And so we've also done so much great work together as far as our grassroots action goes in supporting legislation. When I first came on, one of the first things I did was I automated our action alert system. And so you all probably get those emails where it's like, click here to email this Senate committee or this representative committee.
Yeah.
And streamlining the process for those actions helped us send over 300,000 letters to lawmakers in the past few years. And we've stopped some really bad legislation with that. We stopped a bill that would have set the stage for fetal personhood here in Florida. We helped restore sexual health education for students in Miami-Dade. And we stopped invasive questions about student athletes' menstruation cycles. So we've made a real difference here in Florida. And part of what inspired me to run for National Now president is because I see some of these same systems benefiting not just the national level, but states and chapters across the country. And so I'm coming from a place of, we've done an amazing job resisting here. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's share our successes with other states, increase communication between our chapters, and build the coordinated grassroots actions and replicate wins when we know something's work. And I'm really proud to be one of those millennials that's at the elder end of the millennial spectrum, which means I grew up with social media and technology, but I also had a time in my life where I didn't have that. So to me, it's both is so important, the in real life connections, as well as the amazing power of digital media when we're organizing to reach people way outside our physical proximity. And so my background is in fine arts, actually, and everything that I do, I'm approaching it from a creative mindset, and that works because the visual media is really the communication mechanism of digital media and social media. And I'm really proud to say that some of my digital media campaigns have made a real difference as well. And some of you may have also taken action on that. In January, we were able to pressure through millions of people making phone calls and texts to President Biden to move him to finally declare that the ERA is the law of the land right before he left office. And now that's still kind of like a disputed thing because the archivist didn't go ahead and publish it into the Constitution. But there are arguments, such as from Senator Gillibrand, that say that he actually performed the duty of the archivist in announcing that it was law of the land. He fulfilled the duty of his administrative team member, and he being her boss had the authority to do that. And so we may yet see some challenges based on the fact that there's an argument that now the ERA is already law. And regardless if, those challenges come forward and work or not, or if we need to keep building momentum to actually get it recognized or challenge it, through Congress, that's what we'll do. We'll do whatever it takes. And so I'm proud to bring that digital media strategy. And since January 20th, when Trump took his second term, I've also been organizing not just through digital media, but grassroots or organizing across the nation. I am really honored to say that I am one of the leaders behind the 50-51 movement, and we are working together with Women's March and Indivisible. Some of you may have already been at the Hands Off protest on April 5th, in which we mobilized 5.2 million people nationwide. And our registrations have exceeded that for June 14th, coming up, our No King's Day event. I'm sure many of you are going to be out next Saturday. There's already over 1,500 registrations, which is more than we had for Hands Off. So we do expect to have even more people out. And with the tragic events that are unfolding still in Los Angeles over the weekend, with ICE, Gestapo terrorizing communities, unlawfully kidnapping people who have the right to due process here in this country, regardless of their immigration status. If they're here, they have a right to due process. And so we're witnessing democracy being brought to its knees by this authoritarian traitor to the American people. We're witnessing warfare being waged in communities, and we're witnessing the distortion through disinformation of the narrative of what's happening. They're calling this riots, and they're sending in the National Guard. And it's going to be a very tough next 2 years until we get to the midterms. It may be more tough after that. We know that Trump has said he wants another term. And so we've got the fight of our lifetimes on our hands right now. And what we need to realize as the National Organization for Women is there's no gender justice without democracy. So this is where our attention needs to be. And I've got a seat at the national organizing table, and I want now to have a seat as well. Yes. And I know that there may not be things that we as NOW members are going to be right for. Like, we are not the right crew to go into LA right now and start holding things down when it's already a very tense situation. But there are things that we can do, and that maybe we uniquely are positioned to do, strategic actions and strategic pressure points that if we were coordinated, from all of our chapters across the nation, coordinating with our allies, the people that are with us on the front lines, I know that we can make a serious difference. And now it wasn't meant to be a club. It was meant to be revolutionary. And that's the platform that I'm running on. And if I get voted in as president, you can bet that, Triana and I are going to be there on the front lines and empowering and training and providing the resources for everybody else to get on the front lines in whatever capacity they're comfortable with, whether that's postcard writings, whether that's showing up at your representative office, whether that's leading a protest in the street. There's a role for everybody in this fight for democracy, and we need everybody in the fight for democracy.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Absolutely. Wow, thank you so much, Pat. And I can't help but think, Florida is, Georgia's not much better, but Florida is really ground zero of MAGA world, right?
Yeah.
And we are living, like you said, through Ron DeSantis 2025. We're a year ahead. We've seen the defunding of education, all of it. And the fact that, I know you were instrumental on Amendment 4, we got 57%, which in any other state would have passed. So it just shows you the problem isn't what people want. People are good and people want the right things, but the problem is a small number of leaders who tie our hands, and we need to stop that. So anyway, thank you again. And so without any further ado, Ms. Triana Arnold-James, who is the president of the Georgia NOW. Yeah. So welcome, Triana.
Thank you. And I'm a bit of a conversationalist, so I may ask you all a couple of questions and ask you to participate. Because after I ran for lieutenant governor for the state of Georgia during Abrams' campaign. So campaigning has been kind of like a I don't know the background of me running, for things. So I don't like to stand and just talk and lecture. I like to, ask you questions and things like that. So a bit of a communication. But so I'm going to tell you all, well, you already know I'm the president of Georgia Now. And we have been on the front line of a lot of things, especially our unfortunately our abortion ban bill in the state of Georgia. And I found out recently that the representative that first introduced that bill, he's a senator now. And I was like, how did that happen? How did that sneak up on us? And I remember him saying to the Capitol Police that I was harassing him. And all I did was, and this is how I am. And he was at the well, and he was talking about the difference between a 21-day cycle and a 28-day cycle. Yes. So yeah, so when he came off the well, he's coming out the door, and the Capitol Police and everything is with him. And so I go, hey, is it any chance you might be pregnant? When was your last cycle? Those are two questions I get asked when I go to my OBGYN. So I'm just wondering, since you were telling us the difference between a 21-day cycle and a 28-day cycle. So I was just wondering, if you might have an answer. And he says, that's not the point. And I was like, well, what is the point?
Yeah.
These are things that you as a man are trying to tell us. So I got one of the representative to make an affirmation on the floor to say that, is it fair to say, and this is what he says, is it fair to say that we as men don't know the difference between a 21-day cycle and 28, and we have no idea what the experience is. But I got that on record because it was just
absolutely.
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that we've been on the front line. And so, and I have a couple of friends, I made friends with some of the Capitol Police. And so they'll call me up and they were like, Triana, don't come back to the Capitol today. You might get arrested. So, they give me those warnings. So I make sure that, I have some people looking out for me. But I am not a quiet person. I don't believe in being silent. I don't believe in not taking action. I believe in standing on the front line and putting our bodies on the line to do what we need to do, because this is my country. This is, a little bit about my background. I served over 20 years in the United States Army. If you have,
Thank you.
Yes, nice.
Telling Kat, I raised my hand, I signed that dotted line that I will defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That includes that Commander-in-Chief Taco, against him as well. And it's unconstitutional actually on what he's doing. And, the National Guard, they don't have to participate in his parade, because it's not, we swore an oath to the Constitution, not to the presidency, to the Constitution. So that's a little bit about, my background, serving over 20 years in the United States Army, active duty and reserve. I don't faint, but I raised 12 kids, 8 boys and 4 girls. Between my husband and I, it was 8 boys and 4 girls. And they're all out of the house. So, and I said, well, I was either gonna run for something or run for Congress, because I'm an empty nester. So I could be in DC, I could go and come. But my number 12 is what I call her. She just finished her 2nd year at Kennesaw State. So I'm really excited about that, because she, come August, she'll be headed back. We'll be all good. But I've been in business over 30 years. I've had one business, basically. I have an accounting background. I worked for JAG while I was in the military. So I have a legal background as well. And so these are things that have shaped me to be the woman that I am today, other than my great-grandmother, who was a suffragist. She advocated for our 19th Amendment, giving the right to vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I didn't know that until, my grandmother, who she passed away in 2018. And she showed me a picture of my great grandmother in her suffragist outfit. And I didn't know. And this was just in she passed away in 2018. So this was around 2016, 2017.
Wow.
And and I've always admired and honored the 19th Amendment. And I didn't know why I had such a passion about it until my grandmother was able to connect the dots. So I call myself either Flo Kennedy of now or a new generation suffragist. I am the Flo Kennedy of today. I got a cowboy in the car.
Love it.
But those things about my background, my advocacy is not just with Georgia Now. I have been fighting forever for the boyfriend loophole. And I don't know if you all know what that is, good. But how many know what that is?
I think I did.
Whereas and they reauthorized it in 2022, and so it's due to be reauthorized in 2027. So what we have to do in end violence against women, we have to add that boyfriend loophole back in. And basically what it says is if a significant other is convicted of domestic violence or felony, they can still go buy a gun. If it's a married person cannot go purchase a gun, but a significant other or unmarried person is what they're saying. Unmarried person can still go buy a gun. But if you look at the statistics, it shows that most killings by a gun or for women are done by an unmarried person more so than the spouse. The numbers tell the story. So we want to make sure we get that boyfriend loophole. That's what we call it, but the boyfriend loophole back in the End Violence Against Women Act of 2027 when it comes back around. But that also, the other fight to that is it depends on who's in office. Because if you look at End Violence Against Women Act, it took about 10 years for them to even get to the Act 2022. So, and that's because of the back and forth and who was in office and people not paying attention to what's really going on. And as you all know, that's one of our 6 core issues. So we have to do that, and we have to start now so that when 2027, we're not behind the 8 ball on it. We're setting up with the foundation now so that when it comes in, we have the blueprint to say, with our Congress people, our elected officials, and say, and especially those that we endorse, you need to sign on to this bill, because it goes with one of our 6 core issues. I am also the author of the bill that the reason why we have a Ahmaud Arbery Day in the state of Georgia, which is recognized across the United States as well. In other countries, Africa, London, and I think I got Poland. I think somebody had tagged me in Poland that they were running, they still run with Maud. That hashtag, I still run with Maud, I started that. And then I felt the need to, that not just celebrating how he died, but celebrating his life and what he meant, to his family. And his mom, she endorsed us. And a really good friend of mine's, and Ahmaud Arbery's birthday is the same day of my son, my biological son. His birthday is May 8th. And so when I made those connections and I met his mom the first time and I told her, I said, whatever I need to do, I will be here, until we get justice all the way around for your son, I will be here. And she tells the story about how he used to complain about celebrating Mother's Day. Because my son was born on Mother's Day and her son was born on Mother's Day. And I would tell her that, my son had that same complaint because he had to share his birthday with me, on Mother's Day. But that's a part of, I told you all my background. I told you a little bit about my advocacy. Okay, so what are we going to do with now? Okay. We need to stop the infighting. Because as you all, and what Kat talked about, you all could see, The external fighting is there in where we are in this country and where we are now and where we need to be, so that we can get, I guess, like-minded people elected in midterms. So that could kind of turn the tides a little bit. And we can turn the tides a little bit come midterms, but it's going to take all of us. And it can't be where, I'm just going to say it, like somebody because of the color of their skin, or who they love, or their religion, because that goes against our 6 core issues. So if we're doing it inside, how can we help on the outside? So some of the things, not rebranding, but skill-based, taking all the state presidents and saying, I mean, we've done it in Georgia and it's worked. And why reinvent the wheel? Like you said, there are things that we could do. Like the period poverty bill that happens in New Jersey. Guess what? I took that bill and introduced it in Georgia. And it's working. We've been able to get, things in the school system. So why reinvent the wheel when other states are doing it? Gale's Law, we're going to be doing that, in Georgia. We're working on that. I've talked with representatives and I've talked to senators and say, we need to do this here in Georgia. But why reinvent the wheel? Because there are things that's happening that we can do, but we gotta get on the same page. We gotta get on the same page and say, you know what? Take me out of it. Take how I feel, take my opinions out of this, and let's come together, and back when NOW started, we were in the UNCSW. We were there. So why can't we go back? Mm-hmm. Why is NOW not a presence at the UNCSW? I had I was the chair for the National Committee on Global Feminism, and I conducted a parallel event last year at the UNCSW. I think it was 68. There. United Nations Commission on the State of Women. Yeah.
So we used to be in it and we're not anymore.
We're a part of it.
Oh, we're part of it. Okay.
We're still a part of it, and as many members can go, it happens for 2 weeks in March. But there's not a presence of NOW, as there we go. And Jan has done a wonderful job in making sure that people get signed up. But we need to be hosting parallel events. We need to be standing outside with NOW signs. Mm-hmm. So when people drive by or people come in, they say NOW, National Organization for Women, showed up. Mm-hmm. But it's things like that we could do. But we gotta, like I said, we gotta come together. We gotta get on the same page. So when it comes to chapters, doing skill-based workshops, take a weekend and get all the state presidents, local leaders together and talk about our 6 core issues, talk about running a chapter, whatever, you need in order for your chapter to be successful. Okay, so 6 core issues, how do we do those things? Because a lot of people, will show up for reproductive. In Georgia, we get a lot of people showing up for racial justice, ending violence against women, LGBTQ+. What about economic justice? We get very few, So what I've done is I partner with organizations like 9 to 5 that focus on equal pay for equal work. I always say equal pay for equal work because a lot of times we're not being paid what we're worth. Mm-hmm. We get paid sometimes equal pay for equal work, but what we're worth. But those things like that. So how do we make that balance? So how do we, make sure that our 6 core issues, that chapter is doing those 6 core issues throughout the year and being successful where 200 and 300 people are showing up, or 10, because I believe that the average person is connected to 2,500 people. So this is a crowd to me. This is a crowd. But just things like that. Now I think I covered some of the things that we want to do when it comes to being grassroots, being on the front line. So these things with what ICE is happening, getting all the states to say, hey, let's do something to, you know, because it's happening in Georgia. We had ICE agents show up at a Home Depot this past weekend. You know, those things like that should not be happening. And it's gonna take all of us in order for us to succeed, in order for us to sustain, you know, the next 5, the next 10 years. It's gonna take all of us to do that. And that's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to put my body on the line. I'm willing to stand out in front. I'm willing to say, hey, come on, y'all. You know, let's put our differences aside because we are more alike than we are different. You know, we have more in common. You know, I don't know who gets dressed at the dryer. I know I do. You know, sometimes it's just like, you just have to, you know, who eats leftover pizza the next day, you know, I do. I can eat cold chicken as well, I'm country. But you know, it's those things and looking at you all beautiful faces and hearing you all laugh, that tells me that we are more alike than we are different. So let's get this going.
Yes.
We can do it.
Thank you. Let's get, can I get
together.
a picture of the two?
Yeah. And you all online, thank you all so much for joining us via Zoom.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes,
But
questions.
let me get a photo first.
I have my shoes. I have my shoes.
You wore your gloves. Nice.
Now I have them. I was just like, you know what? I'm about to put these little jocks.
That's okay. You feel comfortable. You be comfortable.
It's Florida. But yes, please. What's your question?
Questions.
What's your question?
Thanks so much, yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
Pat.
you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming. Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know when to vote. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of information unless you want to say, well, so the vote actually takes place on July the 12th. You need to register up until July 11th. And they will send you a link, and I believe it's from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. on July the 12th. So you can maybe bookmark that date and just be aware. Okay.
July.
To your
Okay.
email and check your spam, just in case you don't get.
Oh, okay. We're gonna get reminders, Nancy?
I can.
I
send a
hope
calendar
so,
link.
yeah.
That's.
I'm gonna personally try to
Yeah.
remind the same group that I emailed, but it would be nice if Now did that too. I'm assuming they will.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
And we have a question from Brittany.
Well, now I have 2 questions. One about the voting. Do we know, like, just, I'm curious logistically, like, how many people normally vote, like in our past elections, like what we kind of look at for numbers and?
One election, I saw about close to 300 people.
That's it?
Yeah.
That seems.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a lot.
How many?
I
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear how many?
So she said about 300 people voted the last time.
When it was hybrid, and I think that was the beginning of COVID, I believe, when we went hybrid. So I don't have those numbers, but I will. I'll get those numbers. I reached
Thank
out
you.
a couple of people to get.
Great
see.
question, thank you.
Yeah, and that's not a lot at
No.
all, which means that it could very well be the people that we're meeting with here
Yeah.
that decide to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious.
Yeah. What was the
Um,
other question?
Were you born and raised in Georgia? Because I know you said country, and then I was, but you're Army, so I was like, all right.
I was born and partially raised in Georgia.
Okay.
You can tell by my southern drawl.
I like
And part of Ohio.
Oh,
Atlanta. Now you get me in the deep south, you're really here, my little southern drawl. You're here bad. So.
And are you a native Floridian?
No, I actually grew up in Southern California,
Oh, okay.
and I moved here about a decade ago to help my grandparents.
Very cool. I like that.
So do we vote for each one of you, or are you guys?
Yeah,
We're slate. Yeah.
Okay, so we're.
Oh, yeah, slate.
And how many
Gotcha.
others?
There's
It's
one
just
other.
one other.
Where are they from?
Rose is in DC
Okay.
and
Kim is Illinois.
Illinois.
Okay.
Illinois, DC, and they're slate number 2 for
We're slate-
unknown reasons because they're alphabetically earlier, so it
Yeah.
feels I don't know.
Yeah, so
Funky.
you have slate one, slate two,
Yeah.
we're slate two.
So I had a question about how do we reach out to other now organizations effectively? I know maybe people on this call know other now members, maybe Juanita. I know we've gone to Tallahassee, for example, and connected with other now groups. So I have some names that I could pull from, but how do we make a strong connection so that they understand the importance of all this?
Um, basically what you're doing,
Yeah.
I mean, you hosting us here, you know, it is amazing and awesome. Even though I got lost last night. I'm a bit of a joker too. You know, I'm serious when you need to be serious. But social media. Continue to push out the endorsements. If you have a newsletter, you know, push it out to them.
We have already, but I'll put more from
Yeah.
this meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then like, when it gets closer.
Yes, it really
Thank
is.
you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. But, when it gets closer, we'll be doing phone banking. We'll be phone banking and text banking, things like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you know anybody in other chapters, maybe ask if they'd be willing to do one of these.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
host us for a virtual or,
Yep.
you know, we'll go where people are willing
Yeah.
to hear.
We do
us
as a
out.
date?
Yeah.
There's
There's
a forum.
There's a-
The conference.
Yeah.
Oh,
Should be
Yeah.
broadcast to the remote attendees too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, good. I'd like to see that.
So
Yeah.
it's gonna,
I think on the 12th.
yeah, it's gonna be on the 12th in the morning hours.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
And,
so,
and
yeah,
the only other small plug I'll say is, in my invitation to y'all, there was a link because they're working on getting a table at the conference. And then to be able to put an advertisement in the brochure and also literature, you know, everything is a little more money, more money. So if you know of anybody who might be able to make a small donation, it would be greatly appreciated, I think.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we do understand you know, it's tough economic times and even just your attention and your vote is huge. You know, if you've got a little extra to share and you wanna support us, getting into office at, you know, at any dollar amount, $5 amount, everything helps.
Yeah. Now really
And
needs.
Kat and I, we clicked right off.
Yeah.
This is our first time in person.
Well,
Well, we came across each other at the last year's conference.
Right,
We
right,
didn't have
right.
a conversation.
Yeah.
So, but it's so good to be with her and and all the things that she do and be ready to go. And, you know, there are times at 2 o'clock in the morning, we're on the phone and I'm like, you know, some days I'm like, oh, no. And then some days she's like, hell no. And then we're like, okay, we'll back in, go back in. But we make a great team.
Yeah.
And I think with our background and expertise, I think we're gonna be able to move
Yeah,
now
yeah.
forward, you know.
Definitely.
So,
It needs to come into the 21st century.
Yeah.
100%.
And Triana's got experience as a national board member too, so, you know, where I lack that familiarity with the national board process, you know, Triana's got, you know, enough for both of us,
Yeah.
so I'm
Good.
definitely gonna be leaning on, you know, Triana's like exemplary record of leadership as well.
yeah, I served on the board for 2.5 terms. The first time I was appointed, then I served 2 full terms. And I was the chair for National Committee on Global Feminism. I did end of violence against women. I was on the budget committee. I was on the advisory board. Yeah, they make you work. Any takers,
Yeah.
feel free
Yeah.
to get on the board,
Yeah.
you know, feel free to put your name out there.
We have-
And racial justice, I did that as well, but it's just the difference even in our budget, looking at the difference of when I came in and to where it is now. I thank God for our auditors. They really, you know, are worth the money, and they did an exceptional job at putting us back on track. And you know, as Kat spoke earlier, and I've always said that to her, what Flo Kennedy said to Shirley Chisholm and Bella Epps, she said, "Are we a sorority, you know, or are we an organization?" And we are an organization. And this is our time that we can make these adjustments, but we got to operate as an organization. And that includes like the corporate side of, what we do, because if we don't work, we can do the grassroots, but if we don't work the corporate side, then now is not going to sustain itself for the next
Exactly.
5 years or next 10 years. So we have to work like the corporate. And I think with me being on the board has, in all the committees that, especially being on the budget, because that was like one of my number one things, because I have an accounting background. I'm a numbers girl. I see the numbers, I see the problem. Let's get a solution. Let's implement. That's me. But at the same time, it has to be where somebody that doesn't have an accounting background could be able to understand it. Because after all, this is not our money. This is the money that was donated to us. This is member money.
Right.
This is how we, and if we don't, I guess, baby it or hold
good
true to
stewards
it,
of
to members in member money, then what are we doing?
Right.
So we have to,
Gotta
Be
get
good
that trust
stewards
back.
for-
You've got to get
for
that
that.
trust back from the average member, because I think the average member sees a lot of just constant fundraising letters in the mail
Yeah.
from national, and
And-
we see the grassroots at the local level. But with your accounting, your experience, social media, the way of organizing,
that digital
it
was
would
gonna
be huge. It would be
Yeah.
absolutely,
is,
because the interest is there. We see it.
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And you should be able to understand our budget. You should be able to go on and especially with Jacksonville, where's you're taking part of the money. I don't know, do y'all collect your own member
we get a
money, or-
small portion of people who join. A lot of it goes to
It's sort of a
national.
third, a third, and a third, it seems
Yeah.
like.
So you collect and then sends a check to national, or?
The Florida Now does
Okay.
they do it online,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So national gets their piece, we get a small
We
piece,
get-
but it's,
They send it to us, yeah.
yeah, we get
Yeah.
a little less than a third, I think.
Yeah, It seems a bit,
It's not the process.
and
yes,
that's
it's gotta
one thing
make
I
sure
would
it's
love to
member.
see a little bit more visibility. I mean, I think that's what you're talking about, right? Because
Yeah.
even though I feel pretty involved with Jax now, I have zero visibility into what National Now is doing, and that's why I was so shocked to see what a huge chunk of the money they got. I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I getting for this? I
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
absolutely nothing from National Now. Now Florida Now, I get quite a bit from, right?
Yeah.
They do all the banking and they send us our checks, even though that's a
Yeah.
little antiquated in my opinion, but anyway, that's a whole other
Yeah.
thing. But they try and engage
Yeah.
and help out, but I don't see that at all from
Yeah.
the national folks.
The budget, I think it's only on the website for like 30 days.
Right.
But I think that if you see, and especially you're the secretary,
No, I
Or-
just do the newsletter, I
You
do
do the newsletter.
communications, yeah.
but I think if you look at what National is doing out in the end, right now it can be a little bit better, but it's easy to read than what it was when I first came in.
Right.
I mean, I have a California king size bed, and I had papers all over the place to try to understand. I mean, I was just like,
Yeah.
it was it gave me a headache, and I was like, no, we can't do it. We can't do this, because here again, we're not even though I'm in a sorority, but we're not a sorority, we're an organization. And
Yes.
in order for us to be able to exist in the next 5 years or
Mhm.
next 10 years, we got to handle the corporate side of it.
Yes.
And I think that's a lot where Kat and I come in because of our background and being able to do the corporate side of it and seeing where I've been, because I was on the budget committee, and then, at the same time doing the grassroots, because I think we can do that.
Yeah.
We can do both.
We need both.
And we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
see explosive growth, because let me tell you, 50-51 movement, we've seen explosive growth. There are
Yeah.
people that are coming into, the fight, that are attending the protest for the first time. And, there's people of all ages that are coming
Yeah.
out for their first time of protest. And people keep asking 50-51, where do I join? You know,
Yeah.
where do I join? Like, how do I donate? And we don't have any kind of, we're not an organization. It's a decentralized movement entirely of volunteers. But now is an organization. So
Yeah.
now we're on the front lines. If now we're doing this, we would be seeing explosive growth. And that's absolutely what we need to sustain our membership. We need to be expanding and not losing members. And that is gonna take administrative work, fixing the problems at the chapter levels, and having things that people are excited about,
Yeah.
and ways for people to fight for our democracy and gender justice.
Yes.
And even in this campaign, and just being a part of now, and going to different our partners and where we go, I'm always doing the 2 acts, you know, and that's 1, join us, and 2, donate. You know, and I tell my committee chairs to do the same thing. Anything that you're doing within your committee, make sure you do the 2 acts. And it's working. It's working because even with this election, we brought a lot of people. I mean, I feel like my member chair, she has brought like a lot of people into the fold because they're excited, you know, for me.
I see you out there doing stuff.
It's not a moment, it's a movement, it's a
Yeah.
movement. It's
Yeah, and
real.
they see, you
Real.
know, they
Thank you,
see the things
DJT, yes.
that we talk about on social media. They see the posts, they see, you know, the videos and things like that, and just being at the table with 50-51, then it's like, we can't be sitting back, you know. We gotta do this now. We
Yes.
can't wait till next year to start doing stuff. We
Yeah,
gotta do this now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.
Hang on.
Who's that online? Who's that?
Juanita Powell Williams,
Hi,
Jessica Wilson.
Hello, Jessica.
Hey.
it's my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks
Nice
for joining
to
us.
meet you.
Juanita.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Juanita is a legend. She's a legend.
Juanita's an old person.